it feels like we're in the home stretch now to the midterms. Like this last couple of weeks, I was feeling the urgency.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting there. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's a mix of excitement and anxiety, like a lot of folks, you know?
Yeah,
Um, we have since Donald Trump returned to office, we have the absolute most powerful moment to send a message. And also, he has the same. He's not on track to do well electorally, but he wants to show us how he can defy the courts and defy the Constitution and wield his
sure.
powers. And I think a big question you and I have been talking about is, uh, will the American people be ready for both moments? Overwhelming turnout, but also an even more overwhelming response if and when he abuses his powers to try to manipulate the election. And you and I have been working on ways. How do we actually galvanize that? How do we
Yeah.
prepare people for that second moment and second possibility? Because we shouldn't be caught flat-footed. It will be embarrassing if we get caught flat-footed, and so we want to make sure that we're prepared for both phases of the fight.
One thing that's been on my mind, I always look to my rivals to actually find out kind of where the best strategies have been, because sometimes I don't think they have the best ideas, and the fact that they win despite that makes me very interested in their strategies.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily agree with me, but we talked, I think it was a few weeks ago, we talked about who had the biggest blowout win, and it was actually a tie. I said Nixon, you said Reagan, we were both right. They were both 49-1. Reagan in 84, Nixon in 72. We were both off on the year. You said 80 and I said
It's a
68.
hell of an election.
And it's making me think. I was thinking about this morning as I was thinking about how close these midterms are. Like, where the hell is our Southern strategy? How are we on year 10 and we haven't made this a 49-1 issue? How have we failed?
Yeah.
I'm saying we as a broad we, but like the idea that we should be happy if we win 51-49 is so fucking absurd, considering the absolute theft and lawlessness that we're dealing with, and that you and I obviously report on a lot and see so clearly. And I think we've had a thesis, which is like, let's be really clear about what's going on. Let's make it as easy as possible to understand what's going on. And I know it's a different environment than those environments, right? You've got the media silos, you've got all that. But there's almost this feeling that we're inevitably going to be split slightly down the middle in one way or the other. And history says no. There's these breakaway moments where the American people that say they want a very different thesis for the country. And I just wonder, like, we're on year 10, and maybe our movement hasn't been filled with. I'll finish this monologue in a second. My father's an Olympic champion. You don't become an Olympic champion by trying to pat yourself on the back a bunch and saying I did good enough. Right? You become an Olympic champion by being great and still focusing on where you can gain, where you can take leaps, where your edge can be, and remaining very critical of yourself despite trying really hard all the time. And
Hmm.
I don't know if our movement, and I'm speaking very broadly, has done that. Has done that when we won barely with Biden, when we lost again as we move towards these midterms. Like, I don't know what the great strategy is, but I don't see enough conversations about the great strategy to go win 49-1.
Well, so I'm just in the spirit of argument. I might disagree with you that it's about
Right.
strategy. I'm not sure Reagan had some brilliant strategy that allowed him to sweep electorally. I think it was charisma. I think he had a charisma that was
Yeah, it's
greater
a
than the
vibe.
other guy, right?
It's a
And
vibe.
yeah, but that's where I feel like there's some good news on the horizon. Take a look at like a Texas or a Georgia, at a Tallarico or an Ossoff. I mean, what's
Mhm.
encouraging to me is we've got candidates with a little bit more swagger, ready to meet the moment. Now, that's in specific places. That doesn't necessarily solve our problem of how are we better rallying the nation against this. And I think it'll happen in 2028. We'll have that opportunity to decide if there is a leader or leaders that can take us out of this. But I often think it comes down to personalities. However,
Yeah.
I will say on the specific question we opened with, of are we ready for the moment
Right.
after the election or the weeks after the election if Trump is sending federal forces into places where the results are contested, are we ready to stop the real steal? And that is one place where I'll say, because we need to speak bluntly about this stuff,
Yeah.
I think a lot of organizations in this space are not, despite all the time we've had to prepare, are not well prepared enough for that moment. And you and I have talked about that is, folks kind of they don't want to think about that. They want to put away the bad possibilities and just say, let's only focus on get out the vote. No, we
It's
may need
also
to,
unknown. It's
yeah,
also unknown. Like, they know how to protect the vote, they know how to turn out voters, right? So it's so
yeah,
easy to just be like, "I know as an organization how to prioritize these, I know what to do, and so I'm gonna lean
yeah.
into that and do those things," right? It's an
Well, and
unknown
one
on the
example
other side.
is we have seen an incredible new type of superhero emerge in the past 2 years since Trump has come back into the fore, which
I
is
wouldn't call
the
myself a superhero, but thank you.
yeah, like it's been the legal resistance superheroes have been
Yeah, yeah,
crushing
yeah.
it in the courts when all kinds of elements of society have failed. Um, if Trump is trying to seize ballots, he's not allowed to seize, recount elections, he's not allowed to recount. We're going to need those folks on the playing field after the election to go fight in court. Those are not the same people who go mobilize, 100 million Americans to take to the streets. They're different
Mhm.
people. Norm Eisen, incredible guy. Mark Elias, incredible guy. Uh, you know, all of these folks are our friends. They are grantees, people that we have, supported out there. Many of them to go fight these fights and go fight these cases in court. But we're talking about a different response if Donald Trump is trying to steal the elections. We need those people to go fight and win in court. That could take weeks. That could take months. That is what this administration is counting on. They are counting on a window and I'm going to tell you what that window is. It's between November 3rd
Mhm.
and January 3rd.
Mhm.
60 days. Donald Trump is going to try in 60 days between when the election happens and when the new Congress gets seated to create enough uncertainty to allow Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, to not seat those members of Congress.
Yep.
People don't realize this. Supreme Court decisions and the law allow, in those circumstances, for the House of Representatives to decide who gets seated in its body. Okay. He wants to create that uncertainty so that the election gets thrown into the House so the House decides, so you don't decide, so that your votes basically get negated by this. That is a very scary thing. That was fiction in previous times that could be a possibility this time. That's why we need to be prepared to make that 60 days extremely painful for the Trump administration so that those strategies complement each other. There's the legal fight in the court, there's the public pressure fight. That takes serious thinking. I don't want anyone here who's listening right now to say, well, but someone's doing something about that. I'm going to tell you, there's not two people who are better plugged into what the rest of the movement is doing than the two people you're sitting here with right now. I mean, maybe there's people slightly better plugged in, but we know all the groups. We know all the
Plugged
players.
in.
We're friends with all of them.
We are
And
plugged in.
Xander and I were
There's
just
no
having
narrative.
a
Yeah.
conversation earlier today about how we are frustrated that that conversation I just told you about is not happening among enough players. There may be a couple of folks in our space like us who are saying, hey, we got to plan for that 60 days. For the break glass plan on our side, if we've got to go out there and create an extraordinary moment that we've never seen in American life to protest this abuse of power. I know the legal stuff's going to happen. I know because we're funding it. I know that the
Mhm.
lawyers will be ready to sue. That is not the same as every news outlet showing cities shut down and streets filled of people saying, we will not accept a king as president undertaking this steal. There are great groups out there that have the ability to do that, great
Actually,
partners
but
in the
yeah.
space that have the ability. We got to get more of them in conversation. I don't mean to leave you with a sense of hopelessness here, is to say, wait, no one's having that conversation. I'm just telling you, we are trying to go foment it right now. It's later than I would have expected. I too had hoped some of the other allies we have in this space would have already brought together the red team of 100 different organizations to say, here is what we are going to do to stop the real steal.
Yes.
They haven't. They
Yes.
haven't. I'm telling you right now, they haven't. There have been some conversations, like 10 people at a table, 15 people at a table. It's not the same as getting hundreds of these groups together to say, we are so ready to do an economic strike, to shut down this country if the president tries to prevent the peaceful transfer of power of, for instance, the House of Representatives from one party to another. There are strategies, there are ways to do that, there are powerful tactics. I believe we will be ready for that moment, but it's a little bit like everyone's remembering the term paper is due in like 2 months, and it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, we gotta buckle down now." I'm
Totally.
telling you, that's what we're having to do right now, folks. We gotta buckle down.
And this there's 2 things crossing my mind right now. One, remembering Trump and his allies don't intend to win in a lot of their strategies. One thing he's constantly doing is trying to invoke, uh, emergency powers. And so, he's maybe hoping that when there is a protest about this, like, unwillingness to seat elected officials, that it's disorganized, that there's not a plan, that there's a bunch of people going rogue, that there's, a Jan 6 moment on the other side, so he can invoke these emergency powers and finally claim those executive powers that he's really been fighting for a bunch. If we have to do a long-term economic strike, there's a bunch of things that need to happen. There needs to be, both mutual aid efforts to help folks who aren't in economic positions, great
Mhm.
economic positions to sustain it. I just profiled the Montgomery bus boycotts that went on for a year. There were 540 cars, people driving that made up for those loss of buses, so those people could sustain that boycott and eventually win. Like there's a large alliance that needs to take place. There needs to be bail funds for protesters. There needs to be the enrollment. Like one of the things I think, Miles, that makes this hard when I spoke earlier about how people do what they know how to do.
Yeah.
This type of action forces you to reach out beyond your space. Like it's not just the pro democracy nonprofit, community organizers that are going to be important. It's
Yeah.
unions, it's other groups, it's local officials and networks of local officials. And that is not a network that I think any one player can snap their fingers and confidently say, I know everyone you need to know if you're going to stage like a general strike in America. And a lot of these groups I've never even thought about, like, maybe our groups are thinking about how to be civically engaged. Some of the groups that are really important don't necessarily identify as civic engagement groups that are going to be critical in this fight. Different, workers unions that play an important role in the economy. We're in a different era than past eras in terms of which parts of the economy. We're in a post-industrial era. So which parts of the economy are important to shut down is different, right? Transportation was always a key hub in those strikes. A lot of people work from home now. Like, is that the critical, infrastructure to, effectively say, look, the country's on pause until we say it's not. There's some big questions and a lot of cross sector alliances that need to be created if we do have to, hit the emergency button here.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of great comments of this in the chat. Y'all need to chat with Ezra and Leah of Indivisible. Some of these groups, trust me, we are talking to those groups or starting to talk to some of those groups about exactly what I was just telling you about the
Mhm.
need to really ramp up on this aspect of planning. I mean, literally, while we've been sitting here, I've been writing down some of the names of the different, call it the top 25 folks in this space that would need to be a part of some of the mass organizing.
Like a large
Many of
Minnesota. Nice.
yeah,
Smart. Yes.
which
Yes.
many of us have, we've been already talking to. I mean, Xander has been talking to some of the leads of these different organizations, and some of those folks sharing the similar fear to us is, hey, not enough happening yet on this question. Here's one of the things that Defiance can do about it. I mean, this is one of the reasons we launched this organization. We are not a grassroots protest organization to mobilize 50 million people to get into the streets. There are other organizations built for that. We are the
Yeah.
type of group that can crowdsource support to go create the solution. And so, you know, you guys come to these Friday coffees for insight into what we're thinking about these things. That's what Xander and I are talking about right now. Can we spend some of our finite resources to go pull together some additional last minute war games among these major players across themes, not just the protest organization, not just the No Kings and the Indivisibles, but like Xander mentioned, some of the worker organizations across the country, major community organizing organizations, think tanks, the legal groups that are fighting in the courts. Can we bring a lot of them together
Yes.
in the next few weeks to do some of this additional planning? Like I said, the pieces of it are happening in different places. There's no one behind the scenes here to save you. There's not a Wizard of Oz who is like ready to mount the campaign right after the president uses emergency powers in the elections to get the people to rise up. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't exist. We're going to go try to make it exist. We're going to try to make sure that there's that level of coordination, an additional notch. There's a lot of great coordination happening. I don't want to say there's not. States, national, secretaries of state in different states are working on legal responses, attorneys generals working on legal responses. There is not yet the effort across all of those spaces to say, let's move in lockstep in this emergency scenario where Trump tries to steal the election, and how do we mobilize the entire nation? So, we're thinking about how we can be helpful in that and be a catalyst. And one of the other places is, for instance, the governors. We had on our program the other day our friend Ophira
Yes.
from the Democratic Governors Association. They're doing great work, but a lot of them are rightfully focused on how do we go win these races.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been pressuring governors' offices to do around the country is I need you to stop just thinking about your state for a moment. I need you to realize, governors, you are the leaders in this country day to day of the defiance. We don't have a presidential candidate right now. We don't have a president to
Yeah.
support in office. We need you, the governors, doing things like getting together in the same place, going to the microphones together and holding hands and saying, we're not going to let this shit happen. We're going to fight to protect our Constitution. Does it not baffle you right now, folks that are watching, that we have not seen a moment since Trump came into office where all the Democratic governors hold an emergency meeting to say, we're going to fight back against federal overreach? We've seen Gavin Newsom push back hard. We've seen
100%.
JB Pritzker
We
push back hard. Why the hell have we not seen all of those governors say, emergency meeting, there's a would-be dictator in the White House, we're all getting together in Chicago, and then we're going to do a primetime address to the nation about this? Why has that not happened? I'll tell you, it's because of little shitty aides like me to those governors who say, that's not our job right now.
right.
Let's just focus on Illinois. Let's just focus on New York. Let's just focus. No, you're national leaders right now. Get your asses together. So
United
says the mayors.
States.
Bring the mayors. Bring the
The
governors.
United States.
Go create that
Yeah, yeah.
confab. It just takes one of them. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to call any of them out specifically, but I've already named some of the names. Some of those governors' offices I've reached out to and said, hey, it should just be you. You do it. If you say it, they will come, right? If JB Pritzker, who I think is fantastic, if today he started texting other Democratic governors and said, guys, I think on October 31st, we should come together. Or let's plan on November 10th to come together if Trump tries to steal the election. Let's just be ready. We need to all be in one place so the American people can see us and we can call for the type of action that you can only call for when you have that kind of critical mass. It's not happening. It needs to be happening. And so, we continue to push folks, but now we're going beyond some of that and having some conversations behind the scenes to spend some very serious resources in a final push that I was hoping we weren't going to have to do, but a final push to maybe make some of this happen. So, that's how these things, go down.
Yeah.
It just starts with people, and I give Xander a lot of credit here because Xander has been having some of these questions or having some of these conversations quietly and probing some of these different groups and saying, let me see what people think. Let me see how far the planning is going currently around scenario X of post-election day. And, Xander's come back, I think, pretty dissatisfied with some of the answers. Some
Yeah.
pretty boring, milquetoast, lame-ass 1996 type answers about what the planning looks like. We're not in 1996.
Yes.
It wasn't even a bad year for democracy necessarily. This is a very different moment. It's got to be treated like a different moment. So you're probably going to hear us talking about this a little bit more over the next couple of weeks. I suspect we'll announce something along these lines in September if we haven't lit the fuse enough behind the scenes. But I'm just being real with you guys. This is why you come to a Friday coffee, is to hear the real, and this is where it is. And it's not always the Defiance is winning. Sometimes the news has to be the Defiance needs to kick its ass into gear, and we're going to do that.
Yep. Yep. And I see what folks are saying. Like, and Indivisible 5051, you guys are naming some of the right groups. That's the right group. I'm not saying that there aren't people asking this question. My sense is, and Miles has done a lot of this. Me and Miles did some of this around AI influencing the 2024 election. We call it wargaming, right? Or red teaming. My
Yeah.
sense is right now the plan is written in crayon. And it says, if they do this, then that. And that's the end of the tree. And, and that's not good wargaming, right? There's a million different ways that this election could be attacked. It already is. By the way, it already is. Trump
Yeah.
saying there's going to be armed people at the polls is already voter intimidation. They already did an unprecedented mid-decade gerrymandering to steal seats. So
they're sending 1,000 Justice Department lawyers out to swing states to monitor the elections. Guys,
it's happening.
Let me tell you why the Justice Department is sending 1,000 lawyers. They're going to scope out the places where they plan to do the steal. That's why they're sending them. These aren't monitors that are going to show up and eat peanut butter sandwiches and say, looks good. Looks like there's some good lines. They're sending lawyers to find where they can make a case, even a shitty case, to try to frustrate the outcome in an election. That's what they're doing. They're announcing it.
So there's a bunch of stuff we don't know, right? To the extent that, we talked about Mike Johnson in Congress refusing to seat people. I would say I'm almost at 100%. How do I know? Because Mike Johnson still accept 20 elections, despite 60 court cases that have settled the issue. You're telling me if there's a couple elections worth a couple hundred votes, with a couple hundred votes separating them, he's not going to dispute that?
Already did it. That is the best point, Xander. Donald Trump already tried to steal a national election. This isn't conspiracy theory. Mike Johnson has already taken the opportunity to refuse to seat Democrats. It's not conspiracy theory. He's already done it before.
They're done.
The administration already trying to push forward plans to the Supreme Court to steal your ballots out of the mailbag. Literally. The president reaching his hand in through the head of the U.S. Postal Service to grab ballots to stop them from getting delivered. Thankfully, that's been stopped by judges. I hope and suspect the Supreme Court will not give it the okay. All of these things are happening. They're doing all of these things. And we will still, I think, given the energy in the movement, we'll still win the election. We will still probably get the pro-democracy side to win control of at least the House of Representatives. I think we're on track to make that happen. They just want to throw enough stuff into the works between November 3rd and January 3rd to overturn that outcome. That's where we need to be ready as a country, not just to get on social media and say, this bad, not just to file a lawsuit to say, nope, and then hope that it's all going to get settled in the courts. They're hoping to win this fight in the court of public opinion with MAGA and by taking the court into the House of Representatives. They are hoping to remove you and remove the Article 3 courts from consideration to make this happen. That's where we need to reassert ourselves. That's where we need to be planning for the level of protest in the streets, the level of economic shutdown to make this very, very painful for them to carry out. They need to see that the people are apoplectic because ultimately their authority derives from us, doesn't derive from anywhere else. That's what we need to be ready for. That is where there needs to be more coordination. That's where there needs to be more planning.
And here's why I know it's not sufficient, partially, because you guys don't know about it. In a world where we were getting prepped for this, the type of people that are listening to this would already know the plan and be organizing their community to follow that plan. Like we're down the home stretch here. We're in late August. We've got September, October. We're voting first week in November.
Yeah.
We talk about that 3% number. That 3% number isn't everyone who participates ever. 3% is who is actively engaged in executing a plan, And so the fact that you all don't know the plan, that I don't know, at least the drawn out plan and who I'm looking to in that moment. I think Indivisible has done a great job. 5051 has done a great job in doing something that's very critical no matter what the plan is, which is getting people to join local organizing groups. And if you haven't already, you should join one because that's where the marching orders are eventually going to be coming from. It's going to be town
Yeah.
halls with your local officials or local organizing group. It's a really important piece of infrastructure. And I'm not saying they're not thinking about this. So I don't want this to be like overly critical on them. I am saying that if we want to be the force that then organizes our friends and family around a plan, we need to know what we're doing at different times in different scenarios and how we're going to sustain it. And so that's where my mind's been the last few weeks as increasing miles. I think I believe you believe, which is like too big to start really focused on too big to big coalition. That feels better. That feels much better than the thing we just laid out. Trump has done us a lot of favors and fucked up the entire year over and over again, and literally like convincing his base in so many ways that he's either not for them and the reasons they voted for him, or to stay home because he's got the election rigged and they don't need to come out. As you point out, that strategy I'm feeling increasingly better about. And I agree. The window you laid out is the window that like, should be on all of our minds.
Happy holidays. It's going to be a fun post-election. We're going to have to do a lot of work. But look, folks, I mean, I feel optimistic that we have the energy and the movement to do all of this. I genuinely do. And, we want to make sure that planning is even broader than, some of the great planning that's going on right now. So we're talking about
Yeah,
ways that we can help do that with some really, really great players. So like I said, hopefully, we'll have something to announce on this front in
and by
September.
the way, gang, if you go to defiance.org/midterms, you do have important steps, 6 important steps to us winning in all the ways we need to win, including organizing your friends, making sure you don't get kicked out of the voter rolls, right? Which is a way we know they have been trying to impact the midterms. Really important part of taking this voting early and then taking election day off so you can organize other communities and help other people vote. Really important. Helping count every vote, signing up for ballot curing. This is part of that effort as well. And then economic cooperation, starting to be prepared for economic non-cooperation. No work, no school, no shopping. What I want to do is take that no work, no that 6 point and get really granular with it with you guys over the next couple months.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah, man. Glad you're doing that, Xander. Pro-democracy warrior. We have time for a couple of questions. Then I have to jump pretty soon. Although, actually, one favor for you guys, especially
Yeah.
Defy Ants that are listening, anyone who's listening, help me get this article out into the world. This is the essay that I wrote today. Maybe you read it. If you didn't, I've been wanting to say something for about 3 weeks on this subject about grift and how Donald Trump's go-to
The
accusation about
title's so
grifting
good.
is his most self-incriminating admission. Um, Look, if you read the piece and you don't agree with it, you don't have to share it anywhere. But I'd love your help in getting that one out there to folks because I think it matters right now to focus people on how this man in office made his whole mission against anyone who opposed him, to say that they were to try to discredit them by saying their opposition and your opposition to Trump is just really to profit, and that it can't be driven by values. And there's an incredible side by side here, which is a very scrappy defiance in this country has risen up against this man who is now doing all of the things and more that he accused his critics of doing. Donald Trump is making billions of dollars off of you and the presidency. And they wanted us to believe that Hunter Biden's fucking laptop was
Right.
corrupt. They wanted us to believe that Hunter Biden's scrappy little consulting firm was some sort of massive corruption when the Trump boys are making billions. When, as Xander
Billions.
talked about on last night's program, Barron Trump, who's unemployed and a college student, has somehow made $150 million off the presidency. Go tell that to Hunter Biden. Tell that to Hunter Biden, okay? I want to hear Barron sit down with Hunter and have that conversation. The grift is extraordinary. The whole thing on their end is the grift. And this is what Donald Trump does with all sorts of terms. He was accused of grifting when he came into public office. And he grabbed it and he co-opted it. He said, no, you guys are the grifters. If you
Mhm.
remember, the term fake news didn't start with Donald Trump. Fake news started with an initial accusation that Trump and all of his cronies were inventing stories to push their narrative. What did Trump do? He took the term, seized it, turned it against them. And he made those terms, fake news, grift, his words. It's time to turn those back on him because he is the progenitor of those crimes. He is the progenitor of the disinformation. He is the progenitor of true corruption. Opposing this man and fighting him is not profitable for folks. I'm one little tiny data point there of how it is indeed the opposite. But I've spent so much time with so many people in our space, the pro-democracy space, people running for public office, people running these different groups, people who've given up their careers to go fight this man, people who've detonated their lives to turn against them. And it's about time we reclaim the mantle from Donald Trump. So anyway, if you'd help me in getting that essay out into the world, I think it deserves a second life. So I pasted it there into the chat, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
I don't ask you all that much. I often say, look, if you like it, hit like. If you don't, don't. But help me get this one out there. Anyway, that's all.
Gang, you got any questions? I know we're close to the end here. I think we're 5 minutes in overtime. If anyone, Miles, do you have a back to? I know you have a meeting right after this one.
I do.
You gotta
I'm in
run.
overtime on that.
You
But
gotta
maybe we'll
run.
take
You are
one
in overtime.
question. Maybe we'll take
Uh,
one question. If we get one dropped in there. Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be?
what we got.
I also really love Xander.
Mm,
I love on weekly coffees,
yeah.
just kind of getting under the hood with folks so they can see what we're talking about, what we're working on, what's coming down the pike. If you stumbled into this room because I put on the title Coffee with Miles Xander and Natalie Harp. Unfortunately, Natalie is not joining us for coffee.
Dang.
But if you stumbled into this room, we are defiance.org. We exist as a nonprofit club for the courageous. And that's why we're trying to crowdsource actions every single week to counter Trump's corruption and abuses of power. JV says, Miles, will you send the article to the CNN reporter? It's actually not a CNN reporter. This is a reporter for another publication who was at CNN with me on the same
Mhm.
night to appear. And the answer is yes. I have it on my calendar tonight to send him a note and just say, I've been thinking about our conversation since we had that conversation. That conversation continued beyond those initial comments. He and I got into the elevator. We went up to the green room. We were kind of chit-chatting. But, it's one of those things when someone says something and then later you think about it and you say, I wish I'd said this, or I
Mhm.
wish I'd said that.
Mhm.
This is one I'd been stewing on for a few weeks. And so I just decided
That's
to
how I
write it
feel
down. So
most of
yeah,
the
I'm
show.
going to share this.
Every time I speak on Defiant State. Like, dang. Dang. I should have said that. I should have said this.
Should we do an
Uh,
after show? That's what I would have said earlier. Now that I have
I
more
thought
time to think
Miles
about
like
it.
crazy for Defiance Daily not to be live. 'Cause I was like kind of new at this. I haven't done a lot of this, but all right, fine, we'll do it live. Just Dan Not Orange says boycotts have worked. I don't agree with the whole no work call. It will hurt us working class too much. We need targeted, sustained mass boycotts of the oligarchs. I'll say a couple things there. It's a great comment. This is partially what I meant when I said it's written in crayon. I don't think there's any history of oligarchs and authoritarians being overthrown. Sorry, excuse me, authoritarians being overthrown that didn't rely on some mass participation, including worker strikes and whatnot. The things that have been successful had other things attached to it, like mutual aid networks that were making sure those people were able to continue to live and survive, like maybe mass non-rent payments. So there was no mass eviction because there was nowhere to get renters because everyone wasn't paying rent. So there's a level of organizing that's required. I will say though, there's also no getting rid of authoritarians that was painless.
Mm.
It is painful. What we're not projecting, what you shouldn't be comparing in this moment is the pain we're feeling now in our lives versus the pain of fighting back. It's the pain of fighting back versus the pain of living under authoritarian rule. That is the comparison, and I know that's hard to do when you are right now, for the most part, unless you were in Minnesota in certain weeks, right? Unless you're in certain places, unless you're an immigrant or in an immigrant community, your life hasn't become much more painful. Prices are a little higher, etcetera. You should we're in an era where we're gonna need to fight. It's going to need to be painful, but I agree that we shouldn't be naive. When we ask people to do certain things, we shouldn't be naive about what will allow them to do those things. And the best boycotts, the best movements have been honest about that, have made sure they've organized around those needs. But there will be some pain.
Yeah.
There's going to
Yeah,
be
I
some
think that's right. That is one of the things I'll just say in general, it frustrates me about organizing in general is often people wanna try to make it sound like there's not gonna be any sacrifice. We only win this if there is sacrifice. For those of you who vividly remember the post 9/11 period, that was the biggest criticism against George W. Bush. It was in the immediate wake of it. I'm not talking Iraq war, I'm not talking about the Afghan war outcomes. Biggest criticism at the time was we were already Americans, left, right, and center, to do whatever it took to protect this country and to fight back against an evil menace that wanted to kill our people. And George W. Bush, who I worked for, went out there and said, "Go shopping, go back to work." And Americans said, "That's no, we want to sacrifice. Tell us we need to sacrifice so we can feel like we are giving to this cause." This is a moment that in many ways is vastly more significant than the post 9/11 period. It may have felt more emotional in the immediate wake of 9/11. I'm telling you, right now is far more pivotal for our democracy than the post 9/11 period. And we are ready to sacrifice. Americans are ready to sacrifice to defend their rights. What I want to see is I want to see those governors, those other opposition leaders, our friends in independent media, all the legal groups, all the organizing groups getting together and saying, time to sacrifice. We are going to fight hard if the moment demands that. We're going to do everything we can on the front end in the next 2 months to make sure that the outcome is so decisive that these guys are scared off from the steel. All right, that's one of the ways you solve it. One of the ways you preempt this is we have such a breathtaking outcome in the vote. They just don't even have the opportunity. They can't create the visual of a contested election because it's not down to 50 votes, right? It's a blowout. If we make it a blowout, we don't need to talk about these break glass plans.
It's always critical. I profiled Pinochet. It was critical then. I profiled Milosevic. It was critical then. I just profiled Poland today. Critical then that they lose in a blowout and it becomes indisputable. And what happens is opportunists. We've seen this a little bit in the media. In the media, opportunists, Becker Carlson, and God, I'm losing their other names. Megyn Kelly and these folks go,
Yeah.
you know what? I don't want to stand with them. I see it now. I see where the public's at. And so I don't want this to be the death of me. It can be the death of them. I don't want it to be the death of me. And they start defecting because they're going with where the wind is. Always, always critical, that too big to rig piece of it.
It is. It is. All right, I got to jump, my friend. We're
Well, can
looking
I
forward
read
to
one
seeing you
thing before
guys.
you do? I know I'm
Yeah.
putting you into overtime. I want to read one thing. I wrote this a long time ago about the miscalculation authoritarians depend on. It's just a couple quick sentences. In the years after World War II, a German clerk told historian Milton Mayer that he had once believed keeping his head down would keep his family safe. He hadn't joined the Nazi party, but he hadn't resisted either. He paid his taxes, followed the rules, and hoped the storm would pass. By 1943, he realized his quiet conformity had brought him no safety at all. The house I built on that hope collapsed, he said later. His neighbors are gone, his sons were dead, and his country lay in ruins. The confession captures the most treacherous logic of authoritarianism, the belief that obedience offers insulation. Just want to leave you all with that as we talk about
Amen. Drop that into
sacrifices.
the chat. Drop that into the
Yeah,
chat.
you got it.
Um,
All right, I know you got to run.
Thank you, friends. We're going to see you tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern, as always on Defiance Daily. It's Friday. So this is our PG-13 or R-rated program. This is where we talk about the MAGA losses of the week. This is where we award the Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award to his supplicants. Join us or listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts after the fact. We are on every single day at 5 p.m. Eastern, and then we post those. And most days now, if you haven't noticed, most days now, I try to record my morning essay and also push it out on our podcast channels. So if you listen to us on Spotify, or if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, or you just get the daily newsletter in your inbox from Defiance, I'm now trying to read those because a lot of you are sick of those AI voices. You know, if you're driving and you press the button and it's like, here is the article for today. I don't like them either. So it takes me some time. If I misread it once, I got to record it again, and usually I misread it twice. So it takes me about a half hour to go do that. But I do that. Let me know if you guys like that and want me to keep doing that. If not, I can go back to the robot voice. But anyway, we'll see y'all tonight. Thanks for everything, Defy Ants. We'll talk to you soon.
Later, gang.